Welcome back to Archbishop's Hour. You're listening to us at 98.9 FM in Albuquerque, 104.5 in Santa Fe, 100.7 in Gallup, and 103.1 in Santa Rosa. I'm just thrilled today because a dear friend is back. This is Gary Padilla, who is with St. Thomas Aquinas Parish. And Gary is doing what many of us dream of or imagine that we could do if we had the time. He has a family. He's got a full-time job, more than a full-time job, and he has taken on the new evangelization very personally and has done some really tremendous things and continues to do them. We're talking about his own little movement, and it's not little, called Deep in Your Faith. But we're going to start with, Gary, tell us a little bit about your personal background with the Catholic Church. I'm a revert to the Catholic Church. Since 2004 is when we came back, my wife and myself. My wife is a convert. She grew up in the Protestant world and converted. And since then, just been trying to get deep involved in the church and get involved. I was involved with Men Under Construction that first year that it happened. And then was involved again this year in the third annual. I emceed this year, so that made it really, really exciting. It was a fun time. Tim Staples was great and just really, showing us how to defend the faith, and it just gets you fired up to do different things. And so that's kind of what's brought us up to par. I guess that's kind of quick, but that was a very short form. It's been a tremendous, beautiful road that has brought you back to the faith you were born in.
Correct.
But in your return to the Catholic faith, you've really, really made just a flying leap into all and everything about Catholicism. You've really studied, you've really developed your conscious sense of your faith, your rational, understanding of your faith. And this has led you into some very interesting adventures. What is this mission that you've been inspired to, and how were you inspired to get there?
Well, the Deep in Your Faith Ministries was just something. Right now it's myself and my wife. It's just understanding how much information there is in the Catholic Church, the history. I mean, there's so much out there that's so exciting. And once you start learning that and understanding it, you want to share it with other people. And so much of when I first started, even back in my Protestant days, I was Protestant for 14 years, I always was like, I'd like to be able to share and teach this stuff, but how in the world could you ever get that much information and know it and be able to, shoot it out to people? And then when we came in the Catholic Church, it was like, wow, this is like an impossibility. This is like walking from the, Albuquerque Museum into the Smithsonian going, there's no way. So I started realizing, though, it's not necessary for me to know everything, but maybe I could come up with a way to help other people to find all this information. It's out there.
And accurate information. It seemed to be the springboard for you was making sure people had accurate information, at least, about Catholicism.
Oh, yeah, and just in talking with people. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people. I had, one friend that he grew up Catholic and now is not, or is, I guess I should say. And I'd talk to him about even like some of the rosary pamphlets that are out there. He was like, I never seen one of those. I had no idea what even that was, and just so much of that stuff that it's in print now that wasn't in print. And I didn't know the difference at the time. So I was like, wow, talking to him about it, look what's out there. So just starting to realize there's so much out there and almost realizing that I need to be more of like a librarian that just kind of knows where the data is, talk to a lot of people, know who knows what, and be able to just kind of be a source of information to kind of channel people into different directions. To
the right place where there is good information about the Catholic Church.
Correct.
Now, it's been more than a year since your first foray into some very serious, let's say, serious work that you have done in making clear what the Church is and what the Church is not. And you are really a champion for the Catholic Church in a very unusual environment. Tell me about that. This started with a radio program.
Yes, I like to I listen to Catholic radio all the time, but occasionally I'll switch over and listen to Protestant radio. And I was listening to it, and a comment was made about the Catholic Church, and which was that the sacraments were a checklist. And it just hit me like, okay, that's not right. Even
and they actually suggest that, as you grew up in the Catholic faith, it was like merit badges. You checked them off, and then you went on your merry way.
Well, it was simply that was the comment. It was the sacraments, and it was quoted as the sacraments are a checklist, and if we have that kind of a checklist, why did Jesus die on the cross? I mean, that was the segment that was said. And it was a really short just snippet, and it was like, and then call for more information. So I called. And I just called. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I didn't really want to know what to I didn't know what to do. I called my wife, and I said, I think I'm going to make a phone call, and I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to do it anyways. Kind of my philosophy for, pardon me, any English teachers out there is, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I know I'm not supposed to do nothing.
Very good.
And
yes.
so... Yeah. I just started making phone calls and getting through, and finally, after a couple interesting conversations of why I was calling, I left a voice message on a pastor's and just left it at that, figuring, well, I probably won't hear from him. But I did. I got a call back, and through 2 or 3 conversations on the phone that lasted a while, then it turned into a let's meet for coffee. And it was amazing.
At any point, did you think that maybe that pastor was trying to evangelize you?
I don't think so, because the content of our conversation from the beginning was, we need to be together. I told him my background. I said, there's so much power in ecumenical dialogue and us being of one faith. And the Catholic Church sometimes is not included in that. And I was like, that's not there. So I always talked, ecumenism and ecumenical dialogue. And so that's how we were talking. That was our conversations. Let's see how we can come to a neutral ground on this. And that's where the actual physical meeting started. And it was great. The guy wanted to truly hear what I had to say and see why I didn't think that was correct. And he was open for that, which was what was so powerful and so awesome from that standpoint.
Now, was this also part of that kind of arrangement, those meetings, that you encountered a bookstore in a church? It's a Protestant Christian denomination. We won't name names, but the bookstore also presented some things that would be maybe offensive to a Roman Catholic, certainly, and also we would feel was misinformation. Tell me about that.
Well, it's funny because we met for all this, and it was going really, really well. And as I left, I browsed through just to kind of see what was there. I don't even know what made me go there. And unfortunately, and this is
long in the past now.
I'm sorry?
This what you saw in the bookstore is now in the past.
Correct.
Let us continue.
Yes. So I browsed to the bookstore and just happened to go through and I went through, not specifically, but I was looking for Catholic stuff. And unfortunately, I found some in the cult section. That's
in the cult.
Yes.
As in the cult.
All and right. At eye level, just
with voodoo and other and made up things.
There was the Muslims and just anything Jehovah's Witness. I mean, we were in that whole section, and there was 3 or 4 books and little tiny $3 brochures on what you need to tell your Catholic Church, and they broke it down. Here's what the Bible teaches. Here's what the Catechism teaches. Here's what the Catholics teach. Here's what the Bible teach. And it was for $2.95. You could learn everything you need to know to tell your Catholic friend. And so I left and I called back and I said, well, this is great that we're having these other discussions, but I think I have a little bit of a problem about us progressing on this as long as these books that are in the bookstore stay there. And he was completely dumbfounded, didn't even know they were there. I mean, really? And so that's where the kind of the idea of our discussions expanded a little bit, basically.
Which actually was pretty extraordinary when you consider that the pastor of a particular church, non-Catholic but Christian, but perhaps a Christian church where their whole foundation might be that they're reformed from something, and so there is a great divide between what they believe, and the Catholic Church. You had actually started a dialogue that was very, very productive. And people were but it was your initiative. There are not many people who would actually take this kind of thing on to champion their own faith, Gary. They'd say, those people don't like us, so what the heck?
It's funny because I wouldn't. Honestly, I don't think...
You wouldn't do it, but you did.
I wouldn't do it either. And my intentions weren't to do it, but I just... I think it was just reading so much. I mean, and you read the new evangelization, what we're supposed to do, from some conversations that back when I was a minister in construction, and Archbishop knew my background and said, you need to have some talks with these people. So all this is in the back of my head going, I can't ignore that and not do something. And so I think, so it was not really on my own. It was, I was fighting like, can I ignore that what I just heard? But it wasn't. I was drawn of what I think I need to do, and tons of prayers. I mean, just beyond anything. And
something that's important, I think, to remember here. You make a point of it when you tell your story to me, but that you moved with a sense of, you were galvanized by the energy to address something that was unjust, that was an unfairness, it was unjust, it was incorrect, but you did not do that out of a contempt for this pastor or his people. You did it out of a sense of, look, we are Christians, we have some common ground, and we need to talk about this, and if you're going to talk about it, get it right. And I think the tremendous kindness, the tremendous compassion, and genuine mission of the gospel in your heart is just, it's an extraordinary inspiration, I think, to anybody. It's really quite magnificent. I'm going to embarrass him now if I go on too much. But so what was the outcome of that discussion about, the bookstore? And for that matter, your ongoing dialogue with the pastor?
The funny thing is, and I will say this too, is as this was happening, I had an email group that from day one, I was emailing going, kind of like, I'm about to do this. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know why I'm going to do it. If you can pray for me, I know as a group, I will be the spokesperson / whatever is going to happen.
You were the point guy, yeah.
But yet I was just like, there's no way. I know I'm going to blow it. I had no personal confidence that I could go in there and talk with an associate pastor that wasn't just going to just stomp me with all kinds of biblical everything, and I knew I was completely unprepared. So that's a big part of it. Is I never got even close to thinking I was prepared, but yet I was still drawn to it. And I think it was through the prayers of that group, understanding that this was much more than me. It was what we are called to do. And so it was not through confidence, but through prayers that got me to pull this off. To pull it off, sounds like a huge thing, but so that's what got me to go and to continue to meet and to get on the website. And he'd have a question, and I'd print stuff out, and I would give it to him, and then I'd respond, and he's asking about this, and then I'd get a book from a friend. And Jeanette, who said, here, maybe this is a book you can... And so we were working together as a team. I just happened to be the spokesperson, a team as far as everybody who wanted something to happen. So basically, to make a long story short, after, I think it was about 9 months of discussing and sending, me taking... It was a lot of him reading and me giving him information to read. I went back. I had actually kind of just forgot about it. And then after about two months later, after our last meeting, I went through and walked through that section, and it was gone.
You went back to the bookstore.
Yes, sorry.
And the cult section was gone.
The cult section wasn't, but we weren't in, the Catholic Church books were not in there. They were at eye level.
All right.
They were at eye level where you could read them, How to Save Your Catholic Friends. That's a paraphrase, but that's the idea. And they were gone. They had been moved. I found out they had been moved at first I was just amazed that they were gone, and then I did a little bit more digging because I knew by title that they had been moved. I asked for them by name to the theology section. So, but yet they're not at eye level. They were binder out now. You'd have to look them up. They weren't there. So it was again, one of those things that I was so amazed that I could have been used to that level and not blown it, really, honestly, myself.
And that once you took up this issue, that as a matter of respect for those who are Catholic, for the Catholic Church, and hopefully engendering respect for our faith among our fellow Christians, that people responded is really quite extraordinary. And I don't think we don't, unless we have a mass conversion or something, we don't expect people of other faiths to say necessarily, unless they're moved by God, to say, oh, you're right. Everything I believe is wrong and what you believe is right, and I'm jumping on board. As interesting as that would be, if the world doesn't always work that way, God sometimes works that way, but it is wonderful to be able to say, when you have your mind open with respect to our faith, that's when the gifts of the Holy Spirit occur. That's when the Spirit moves. And I think the initiative that you showed, the tremendous inspiration and energy fueled by those prayers, is something quite extraordinary. And I don't think I think people actually have they have opportunities every day in some fashion to formally, overtly, or quietly show their Catholic faith. They don't necessarily take them. They don't necessarily think that makes sense. Maybe they're not sensible things to do. As you suggested, you didn't know if it was a sensible thing to do. But now, that having had a very, rather a delightful outcome, actually moved you into the next stage of deep in your faith, which is an actual an actual ministry, an actual campaign. Tell me about that. Tell me about these delightful little cards. We have a Deep in Your Faith. What do we call this card? An information sheet? What?
It's like almost a little miniature track, really, I guess.
It's right up there with tracts that we have seen that others have utilized, but it's the size of a business card, and has DYF at the top, Deep in Your Faith Ministries. It has Gary's name and a contact. And what you've done is make a list of websites for Catholic information, CatholicsComeHome.org, Catholic.com, Catholic Apologetics. The Bible Christian Society has free CDs. CatholicCity.com has free CDs. He does mention Catholic radio, which I'm very proud, so that if someone were misinformed, say, if someone said something about the Catholic Church that you knew was wrong, and maybe you thought, I don't know if they're going to respond well if I say, no, let me put you on the right road. There's nothing wrong with giving them a card or saying, by the way, you ought to listen to Catholic radio because you'll hear apologetics on that, and that will put you on the right road. If you think somebody might be cranky or combative, you don't want them to be upset for the day, but if they're intrigued enough to listen to the radio, they might get, adjusted in the day. So when did you decide to have these little cards made up? You did a run of 1,000.
Yes.
Which is pretty outstanding. And you had to do your research first to find the websites.
Yes. Everything that's on there was the stuff that I'm getting information for. And the interesting thing, one of the comments that was made during our dialogues with this pastor was the idea that I would talk about everything that's going on at my parish, St. Thomas Aquinas, and I would give him all this information, and he was like, wow, that sounds like a very vibrant, alive, well-teaching, very impressive church. He said, but the people that I come in contact with say that there is nothing going on in their church. There's nothing. There's nothing. That's why they leave.
And he was talking about Catholics who leave their Catholic parishes to join, to take part in this other Protestant Christian church here in town.
Yeah. So what kind of made me think of is, again, going back to my librarian thing, how do you get that information out there? Whether they read it or not is kind of secondary, so they can't say there's nothing out there. Mm-hmm. Because they're obviously not going to go to the websites and dig it up themselves. And a little card, that right there is, who knows how much information they could get. So when you come in contact with them, or a person, which I have, that has said, do you know that they're fallen away Catholics, Catholic this, Catholic that, I'll say, well, check this out. Here, if you ever want to know, if you ever question about the teachings, here's this. And I made it specifically a business card size. I had started out with flyers and all, because it can go in your wallet, it can go in your purse. and it'll stay there. It's not big enough to make you throw it away just out of habit when you're cleaning out your pockets. And it's amazing how many.
There's a science to this. There's a method.
Well, it's funny, and I'll tell you, I've given it to more than one person. When I hand it, especially the men, they actually, because it's a business card, pull it out and they put it in their wallet. And so they would have to fit. They have
to go through the wallets to find it again.
To find it,
if they want to throw it out, and the opportunity is always, hey. Now, what's interesting to me here, I don't want to dwell on this because we have more to talk about of the things that you've been doing, but what is interesting to me here is that while people, I hear stories about people who were raised Catholic. Maybe they didn't practice much, but then they do drift to another church, another denomination, and they say there was nothing going on at my church, or it was boring, or something. And I just feel more welcome here. Or I have a better time. That sort of malaise, that boredom with their home faith, their family faith, that the church that they're attending, they have the initiative, they have the energy to walk across the street, metaphorically, to go to another house, but they don't. It doesn't seem to occur to them that maybe it's. How do I say this? I want to say it nicely. A friend of mine, his mother used to say, "If you're in New York City and you're bored, it means you're boring." She had a feeling about the liveliness of New York City, but I think that we should take a page from her book and say, if you are going to church and you're bored, you may not be boring, but you may not be putting your energies into inquiring into what your church is about. And until you have inquired, until you have done the research that Gary Padilla has done, there are many places to find information, and you don't have to be an expert, but maybe it's time to make that inquiry personally and say, if this is not lively enough for me, maybe I better find out why. Because it's a very boring, it's a how do I say it? It's kind of a lazy thing to do, to say, it's boring here, so if I walk across the street and they're all amusing me, hey, what a great thing. That doesn't give you any depth. That you might as well, that's like on a television. Find out more about your faith first. Now, so ends my little lecture, but I think,
Well, it's funny that you say that, because...
Not that New York is the Catholic Church or vice versa.
Well, some of the things that I talk to people now is, and I could say it really joking around. I mean, you just get to that point where, and as long as they understand, of course, you obviously have a relationship with the person, but as I try and evangelize a lot of ex-Catholics and Protestants who are in Bible studies, and what I tell them is, I wish you could come back. Hope you would come back, because of the amount of knowledge that you've received just on how to study the Bible. I said, you apply that. I said, you'd have a Bible study and have 50 people there signed up, ready to go, because of what you've learned and how you've learned how to conduct these. They kind of look at you a little weird, like, well, it's like, no, that's a good thing. I mean, you've learned how to study the Bible. You've learned how to put together Bible studies. You've learned how to make it exciting. You've learned all this stuff. And there's Catholics that are dying to know that. I mean, they're dying to be in your class right now. I mean, I told the pastor, I said, you'd have 300 people in your class if you were to come Catholic right now. And he just looked at me and I said, so this is a positive thing. This is how we can come together. I mean, everything I'm talking about, it's nothing new. I mean, look at all the Protestants that are converting, that are making all these huge, Scott Hahn and all these people are making these huge dents or huge positive growth in the Catholic Church, because they've learned it and they know how to study it. They know how to bring out the depth of the Bible, and it's incredible.
It's fascinating when you look at the tremendous erudition of some very famous converts who and when they have come back or entered the Catholic Church, they don't seem to do it it's not a great sense of rancor for the denomination, the Christian church they formerly espoused. It seems to be that all of the knowledge and all of the growth, understanding, and study that they have put in to Scripture, to the message of Christ, has brought them to the Catholic faith as the source. Everything that they studied and learned, it occurs to them, actually was something that had its source in what we call Catholicism. Once upon a time, it wasn't Catholicism. We had the Pope in Rome, but we were all Christian. And so to come back to the source is, I think, an extraordinary moment for them. However, we want to go one step further. Deep in Your Faith is your own campaign. They're your own cards, and they're pretty. They're really marvelous. And you think, why have we never done that before? The closest thing has been Deacon Byron Wicker's campaign out of Shrine of St. Bernadette, which was little paper, they call them door hangers, little things to hang on doorknobs, like the pizza delivery man might leave, only it says, do you have questions about this? Come on back home to the Catholic Church. And for one parish's campaign, that has been very successful and beautiful, but I love these little cards. That's expanding it the next step. But you have expanded the next step, and you actually became involved in making information available even on a wider scale. Tell me about this brochure that you have in front of you.
Well, basically going back to, now we need to get the information into the churches. How do we do that? And it's interesting that all the things I learned, so much, I got all these free CDs and listening to the radio. There's so much out there. It's like, so how does the average Catholic who doesn't listen to the radio as much get this information? And basically, I was contacted. I had contacted this company, Lighthouse Catholic Media, a few months back, and it just didn't work out. I was looking for more of a permanent type of a job, and I had kind of let that fall away. Well, 3-4 months later, just out of the blue, I got a call back from them, and they were looking for a rep for New Mexico. And so I got more information on it, and to kind of understand what it is, it's basically a company that produces talks by completely Orthodox. Scott Hahn, Father Benedict Groeschel, Mother Teresa, Archbishop Fulton Sheen, and they've duplicated all their DVD CDs, and made them available through this program where you can actually get a kiosk and put it in your vestibule, in your atrium. It's stocked with CDs, and the person can just come over, take out their own CD and put in a little donation if they want it, or it can be free if the pastor or whoever chooses, and they take that information. So all the information right now is at the back of the church. They grab the CD, they go home and listen to it, and it's encouraged that they pass it on. And I went, wow, this is an amazing program. So I started digging into it more, and there's 2,000 churches right now that have these kiosks in their vestibule, or atrium, whatever you have, and they've distributed almost 2 million CDs. And they are tracking this stuff. It's only been around for about 4 or 5 years, and they said that the pastors are noticing more involvement in their church, higher tithing, everything, because people are understanding their faith. And there's the amount of talks is huge. There's almost 100 talks. They've got Spanish talks, and they're right there. They just have to walk to the back and take that information. It's now that they can't say, oh, this church doesn't have anything. Even if they don't have a developed religious ed program, small church or whatever, they can get a CD and listen to the teachings of Archbishop Fulton Sheen. That's amazing to me. And so that's why I got on board and started doing this. And just, this is like almost the kickoff month for me to try and make this thing happen. So, well,
that is a very exciting possibility right there. Now, we have to do nuts and bolts. Who actually pays for the kiosk and the CDs?
Well, the amazing thing about it, it's they call it a faith raiser, because basically the church actually purchased the kiosk, okay, and then the kiosk itself sits by itself, and then there's a donation box. So they can leave a donation to kind of pay for the CDs themselves. Most kiosks are paid back and paid off that initial purchase to get the kiosk and get it all set up within 7 to 10 months. That's average. Past that, the donations are just kept by the church. So basically, the church purchased the CDs. They're like, normally these CDs might run like $8 to $10 or something like that, and the CDs, you donate like $3. And so it's a self-funding program. So after the first few months, the CDs just pay for themselves. And
now the CDs, when you say $8 to $10, that's not for an individual CD. is that for a block of them?
No, that would be if you. I'm sorry. Let me clarify that. That if you were to buy them like off the through a website. If you were to go through a website and buy through this program, the CDs, there's a $3 donation. So that's the most you would spend on a CD, or there's even the option, if the pastor wants, if he just wants to get the information, to just put free CDs. You can actually get the kiosk with a free CD label, and they can just take the CDs if the pastor really just wants to get this information into their hands. And then the church itself actually replenishes the kiosk. And that's where they would go through that. So they're buying the CDs, but then they're reselling them. And I mean, it's a self-funding program. It's amazing, the dynamic where people can get this information to whatever level the pastor wants them to.
And what is the name of this program called?
The actual company is Lighthouse Catholic Media. They're a national company.
And the kiosk program is, I'm looking at Contemporary Challenges thinking.
The kiosk program, it's basically called a faith raiser.
A faith raiser.
Faith raiser. And it's basically the idea that, just a couple of things, that talk about that over 65% of Catholics don't even attend Sunday Mass. 30% of Catholics don't believe in the real presence. And these are statistics, there's nearly 120,000 practicing Catholics that stop going to Mass every year. I mean, if it was actually a denomination, the second largest denomination in the country would be ex-Catholics, if that was a denomination. I mean, and most pastors know this, but once you start getting information into their hands, now it's that idea like I talked about before. It's like they can't say, oh, you didn't have any teachings. I left because you didn't teach me anything. It's like, it's there. It's right there for you to ignore and blind as you walk by.
Right. And I think what's fascinating about this is that the kiosk concept, the almost free or open to donation availability of information that people could take home, maybe listen to in their car, maybe listen to at home, something that they take home. If they're in the habit of going to church, going to Mass on Sunday, and forgetting everything for the rest of the week, then bringing something home with them is really a fascinating move in the right direction to open their minds to explore. And that exploration, that just cultivating that curiosity and openness to learn more, I think is probably the only antidote to being boring in New York.
Well, the interesting thing is, just to give you an example, the first parish we put it in was St. John Vianney, and I'd heard, people are interested in this kind of thing. And we put the kiosk at St. John Vianney, which is a mission church. I mean, it's literally just one building at this point. And it started off with 200 CDs. We stocked it at 200 CDs. And I said, well, let's see what this is going to do. 2 weekends later, they were out. I got a phone call that they had zero left. 200 CDs had went out the door. And I was shocked. I actually thought, well, maybe somebody took them off, So that was the kind of information that people wanted, and they shared with others. And since I've talked to them, there's RE people, there's new people that come to the churches, they'll give them that CD. I mean, there's so much excitement about this. I couldn't believe it. From that small of a church, 200 CDs went out in 2 weekends. So that shows the kind of, it's amazing.
It means that the people at St. John Vianney are not boring. But it is something to remember. If you are sitting in church, if you are in Mass, and you are bored, let us consider that you're not understanding what you're hearing, and you need to investigate it. This is if you're an adult. There are many people who will help you in your own parish, whether it's your pastor, whether it's people who handle religious education. Probably the guy next to you will help you. If you say, I'm not getting much out of this, somebody is going to say, let me put you on the right road. We'll say our prayers that will always happen. But certainly the next step to becoming involved, to really understanding what it is that you pay lip service to. If that's what you find that you're doing, take that next step. But Gary, do you want to give out your name in case you want to hand out more of these? I love them. Deep in Your Faith, little promo cards. Yeah. They are just great.
Yeah, if anybody, on 2 levels, if anybody wants to get involved in Deep in Your Faith, they can call me, and I'll get them some of these cards, just as little tiny things to pass out. Or if there's a pastor that wants to look into this kiosk, they can get a hold of me. Or if there is somebody that wants to get in deep in your faith and then help the pastor to get this program going, they could contact me.
What number should they call?
Well, they can contact me through email at padillasforhim.com.
And that's, of course, for those who might not know, Padillas. Padillas.
And then
for him.
four is spelled out for him at AOL. So PADILLASFRHIM at AOL.com. Or they can call me directly at 505-239-2785. 505-239-2785.
And it's a beautiful message. It's just delightful to hear an individual's course championing his faith and learning more about it and helping others to find out about it too. I want to thank you so much, Gary Padilla, for all your good work. It's just always a delight to have a conversation with you and hear all your enthusiasm. We can't be bored in Albuquerque. We will not be bored, and we will not be boring. Thank you so much for listening to Archbishop's Hour Catholic Radio.